All right. So first off, I had a couple of technical difficulties in the streams last week. Unfortunately, I didn't realize until I had actually gone back and listened to the recordings. So if that is happening today, I apologize. So we are live in about a minute and a half, so around the 2-minute mark of the stream. If you're listening back to this, we're going to get going into the show. But we are live, and we are going to be talking today on the podcast about detaching from outcomes. And yeah, but we're going to give it another minute before we get started. So if you are tuning in right now, I'd love to hear a little bit about you. If you're an athlete, what sport are you training for? What are you struggling with right now? Anything that you've got coming up that you're excited about? Any of these things just helps me help you more with this show. So I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know where you're at. I'd love to know what you're up to. And I would love to know if there's anything you'd love to learn more about on the podcast in future episodes. Today, we're going to be talking about detaching from the outcome. And just a quick reminder before we get into the show, with this podcast, we are trying to reach athletes. With this podcast, we are trying to reach athletes. We are trying to help athletes reach the next level of themselves. We are trying to help athletes reach higher and higher levels in sport, build their dream careers. And that is who we are looking for on these live streams. That's who we are looking to reach with the podcast. So if you are an athlete tuning into this, share the show with a teammate, share the show with a friend. But for now, let's get into another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, talking about detaching from the outcome in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the #1 show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are going to be talking about detaching from the outcome. So, obviously, if you're an athlete, you want to win. You want to be successful. No athlete out there goes into competition hoping to lose. But this episode, we're going to be talking a lot about the psychology behind how you approach a competition, the psychology behind how you approach a competition with a better chance of being successful. And we're going to be talking about what you can do to give yourself a better chance of being successful before you actually step into competition. So the reason I wanted to bring this episode to you guys today, the reason I wanted to talk about this subject is because I often see athletes that the #1 and only thing on their mind is winning. And as much as obviously I understand that, I understand the desire to win, I understand the desire to be successful, I want to really get across the fact that coming into competition with winning on your mind is not the only way to actually be successful, is not the most important way to actually be successful, and sometimes can actually be detrimental. So I know that sounds crazy, but that's what we're going to get into today. So when you're coming into competition and the only focus you have is winning, the only focus you have is the outcome of the competition, now you're coming in with the mindset almost of trying not to lose, right? So for combat athletes, as an example, you're coming into competition with winning being the only thought on your mind. You're going to be worrying about how every move looks to the judges. Did I win that round or did I lose that round? What's going well? What's not going well? All of these little things are on your mind the whole time you're competing, because again, in your head, everything is about the outcome. Now, of course, I understand we all want that positive outcome. We all want to actually win when we come out of competition. But do you resonate with that? If I talk about how, coming in with the sole focus of winning, people have that mentality of almost trying not to lose. They have that mentality of worrying about how certain things look, worrying about, is the judge going to see that my way or his way, my way or her way? Versus when an athlete comes in and focuses on performing, now the result takes care of itself. So if you're an athlete and you're coming into competition and the only thought on your mind is performing at your best and you're not worrying about the outcome, now the outcome is going to take care of itself. because regardless of the situation you're in, you're just focused on doing the right things and doing it as well as possible to ensure that you're performing at your best. Whereas the guy or girl who's focused solely on winning is focused on how does this look? Oh, if I'm, for an MMA fighter, oh, if you're being controlled on the ground, it's that concern of I have to get off the ground right away because the judges aren't going to want to see me on the ground and that's going to look bad. And if I look bad, then I'm not going to win the fight. Versus the guy who's thinking, I'm stuck on the ground right now. How do I get back to my feet? How do I reverse? How do I get on top? How do I start implementing my game plan? Now, when you're focused on performing, that does not necessarily mean that you're just magically going to win. There are still going to be times where you can do everything right, make a critical mistake, and lose. But when the focus is on performance, now you're giving yourself a better chance of winning, because if your only focus is on performing at your best, then in every situation, all you're focused on is putting your best foot forward. And if your focus throughout the entire duration of the competition is put my best foot forward, now you're giving yourself a better chance of being successful. So one of the other really important reasons why you want to be focused on performance instead of focused on the outcome is that when you focus on the performance, even if you do come out with a loss, you're going to be able to keep a better mentality about it, because instead of coming out and thinking, well, I lost, that's the end of the world, that's it, and just being upset, you can look at the mistakes that created the loss. You can look at what you did right, what you did wrong, how you can change your training, how you can improve your performance to make sure that you come out with a better outcome next time, right? This is one of the things you see people at the top, people at the highest levels do all the time. When they do come out on the wrong side of a competition, when they do come out with a loss, instead of just being like, fuck, I lost, and just, that being the end of the world, they're coming back and they're looking at the mistakes they made. They're coming back and they're looking at what they did right, what they did wrong, and what they need to change for next time. So how do we get focused on this? Because as I talk about that, I obviously understand it's much easier said than done. It's easy for me to sit here and say, don't worry about losing, go into competition and just think about performing. It's a whole other thing for you to actually go in and consciously focus on your performance over the outcome. And I understand that's a difficult thing to do, but let's go into a few tricks on how you can do that. So the number one thing that has helped me do that within running a business, within coaching athletes, within all these different things that I do within my day is I focus on visualizing. And this is something that can be massively helpful to you as well, is visualize every piece of the performance. Visualize everything that could possibly go wrong and visualize what you need to do in those bad situations to get out, to get back to your position, and to start implementing your game plan again. Now, the reason you want to look at the negative side for visualization as well as the positive side is that when you're looking at the negative side, you can first reinforce in your mind that even if I get put in bad positions, even if things don't necessarily go my way right from the start, I'm going to be okay. MMA fighter example again, you get trapped on the ground. If you visualize that position 100 times, you've been in that position 100 times, now I know what I need to do to be able to get out of this position. So instead of freaking out and going, oh no, what are the judges going to say if they see me in this bad position? Are they going to start scoring the fight the other way? Now you can stop, you can focus, you can calm down, and you can put yourself in a better position. So visualizing every scenario and understanding that whatever happens, you can be okay. Even if you lose, whatever happens, the sun's coming up tomorrow and you're going to be okay. Now, understanding those bad positions and understanding that you can succeed despite those bad positions will also allow you to visualize how you can overcome them. And if you can overcome those bad positions, put yourself back in better ones, now you can start to implement your game plan and you can take that win back. So the other thing is that this just helps you keep calm. This helps you keep calm when those positions present themselves, because now instead of only being in that position during the actual competition, You've been in that position 100 times in your mind. You've been in that position 100 times in training, and you understand what you need to do in order to succeed. So when it comes to focusing in on your performance and focusing in on, when it comes to focusing in on your performance instead of focusing on the outcome, the other thing that I want you guys to start understanding is to just reinforce your skill set, reinforce what you're doing within your training. So instead of thinking about how hard your training was and how someone who trains as hard as you comes out with nothing but a win, reinforce the different areas of your training and how you're going to use them in the performance. So it's not just about training super hard so you can win. It's about training this specific aspect of your skill set. Because if you can train that specific aspect of your skill set, then how is that going to actually come into play when you compete? Because if you have that understanding and you say, I'm working on this specific aspect of my skill set because that's going to come into play here, here, and here while I compete, now you're reinforcing that you are ready to perform, not that you've worked hard enough that you deserve a win. Does that make sense? And then also, the more you keep conscious of that, the more you understand these are the things I've been working on. These are the reasons why I've been working on them. This is how they're actually going to help me when I compete. The more you understand that, the better they're going to come into play when you actually need them. So this is a nice quick episode today, but it's a good way to start off your Monday, start off your week in the right mindset. The way you are going to be successful is by not focusing on the end goal, not focusing on the win, but by focusing on what it actually takes to achieve the win. And we're going to talk about that quickly in another light as well. This is the same idea for a career as a whole. We've been talking about focusing on the outcome, focusing on the performance over the outcome when it comes to actually one competition. But if you can spend that same focus on your actual career, now you're going to get further in your career as well. We're going to go back to that example of that MMA fighter. If you're a young fighter right now and your goal is to be in the UFC, if your only focus while you're training is to be in the UFC, 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 now you're not putting in the right work to get you from step 1 to step 2 along that path because you're too busy focusing on step 20. However, if the focus is to become the person and to become the athlete that deserves a place in the UFC, now you're going to maybe take a longer road, but you're going to take a longer road that's going to allow you to be properly prepared and in turn be more successful when you get there. So the same idea as we talked about within a performance, focusing on visualization, focusing on understanding the things that cannot go your way along the way, we need to do the same thing when it comes to the career as a whole. If you're a young athlete right now and you've got high-level goals in your sport, instead of spending your time focusing on how to get to those high-level goals, spend your time focusing on who you need to be tomorrow. Spend your time focusing on those basic habits you need to start instilling in yourself in order to have a chance at those goals down the road. And when it comes to creating that person that deserves to be at that level, that is an everyday process. That is a process that you need to work on every single day in order to give yourself a chance to achieve it. Now, by putting your focus on taking one step forward, by putting your focus on improving one thing today, now you're going to take a step forward every single day. And if you continue to take steps forward every single day, that result takes care of itself. However, if you focus on trying to jump to step 20 from step 1, you're going to miss steps along the way. You're going to fall back down the ladder. And in turn, you're going to have a way tougher path to get there. And when it comes to falling back down the ladder as well, when it comes to that visualization we were talking about earlier, now when you think about your career as a whole, I don't want you just thinking about the positives, just thinking about, that first UFC contract, just thinking about that world championship. Think about the losses. Think about the injuries. Think about the tough times. And the reason it's so important to think about those things now is because, for the most part, they're inevitable. They're going to come. You're going to lose. at some point or another. You're going to get injured at some point or another. Bad things do happen in the pursuit of something great. But if you've prepared yourself and you understand how to deal with it, if you've prepared yourself and you understand that you're going to be okay when those things happen, and you understand what you can do to get past them, now you're putting yourself in a better place to be successful down the road. You're putting yourself in a better place to be successful down the road, because when those things come up in your career, you're ready for them. And if you're ready for those things when they come up in your career, you can work through them, you can get past them, and in turn, you can continue to see more and more success as you move forward through your career. So that is it. That is all. I hope you guys took a little bit of value away from this one today. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, I would love to hear what it was. Drop me a comment on the replay or leave a review for the podcast itself. Every single review means so much to the success of the show. As always, I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault. I appreciate those who took the time to tune in live today, and I look forward to bringing this all to you again tomorrow.